National Assembly approves borrowing request totaling $28.2 billion. Purchasing Managers Index PMI for the month of May shows weakened activity levels. Countries can take steps now to rebuild from COVID-19, securing core public service. Getting money directly to people and maintaining the private sector will limit the harm and help prepare for recovery. Plus, oil prices head towards $40 as OPEC meeting approaches. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Amina Nujaim. Thank you for joining us today. The Senate has approved President Muhammadu Buhari's $5.513 billion external borrowing request. The approval came following consideration and adoption of the report of the Senate Committee on Local and Foreign Debts. Given a breakdown into the sources of the loan request, Chairman of the committee, Senator Clifford Odia, said the federal government would source $3.4 billion at 1% interest rate from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) for rapid financing instrument to part finance 2020 proposed revised budget.
That the terms and conditions of the loans from each lender, as are contained in the duly executed loan agreement, be forwarded to the National Assembly for proper documentation.
There will be deficit in the 2020 budget, and there will be necessity to take borrowing to be able to bridge the gap.
Similarly, the House of Representatives also approved a $22.7 billion loan, which was rejected last year, bringing the total approved loans by the National Assembly to $28.2 billion sought by President Muhammadu Buhari. When the president sent the request in 2019, Buhari said the loan will be used to finance key infrastructure in the country.
We met as leadership with the Minister of Finance for this bill yesterday. And I told her, this is the clause we're putting into this report. Do we have your commitment that the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri Road must be a part of, or we will not consider any report, any borrowing plan if that is not included? And we got her word.
Subsequent loan will also be committed to the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri rail line.
Use your good office to make sure that the commitment we got from Ministry of Finance yesterday is carried to the...
While some are groaning under the coronavirus burden, others are thankful the occasion has brought them benefits. There is no substitute for water, and so its relevance is timeless. Let's now join Bosede Abel.
For a good number of people around the world, a lockdown was never what they envisaged. But then, coronavirus happened and started a chain reaction that would alter the global way of life.
Lugbe, a suburb in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, is one of those places where water is gold. With more people at home, the demand for water has increased significantly. 28-years-old Aminu Abubakar is a water vendor known in local parlance as Mairua. At daybreak, with his face masks on, Aminu is set to take delivery to his customers that now have high demands.
Mutane na gida, abin da ya sanya muna samu kasuwa bakin.
People are at home, that's why we are making sales. Before coronavirus, people were hardly home and business was slow. But now we are making more sales from 500 naira to 1,000 naira daily. The truth is, people buying water are more now. I make up to 1,500 naira daily.
Before coronavirus, though I used to buy, but not much, not like before, understand? But now, it's because of my family, my sisters, everyone at home, and we don't used to go out every day. I'm the only one surviving to make sure there's water at home because without water we can't do anything, we can't wash, we can't cook. The little thing we have, we need water to use it for flushing of 1 or 2, taking baths, that's why.
Some people used buy 1 truck, 2 truck, but now something like they buy like 7, 8 truck now because of the restriction of the water and the lockdown.
It's 20 naira per jerrycan, 3 times in a week.
There's been my customer even before the COVID-19.
We have an open door, the COVID-19 pandemic. We should move as quick as possible, get the community, bring the concept of water marketing into the system. The people will agree now, provide them with the facility, let them own it, or allow private sectors in their community to set up themselves, organize them, sing a borehole for them, where you do the operation and maintenance, and then collect the money to maintain. People are agree now.
For the likes of Aminu and Mohammed, business has never been this good.
Thank you, Boss Eddie. Now, the World Bank Group's Global Economic Prospects report this Wednesday calls for growth plans, saying the coronavirus pandemic and the economic shutdowns are dealing a severe blow to the global economy, especially poorer countries. The report advises developing countries and the international community to take steps now to speed up recovery after the worst of the health crisis has passed and blunt long-term adverse effects. The World Bank suggests short-term response measures to address the health emergency and to cure core public service will need to be accompanied by comprehensive policies to boost long-term growth, including improving governance and business environments and expanding and improving the results of investment in education and public health. The analysis has been released ahead of the June 8 issuance of the full report, which will include the bank's latest forecast for the global economy. President Muhammadu Buhari, alongside other African leaders, has endorsed the second-term presidency bid for Dr. Akinwumi Adesina as president of the Africa Development Bank, following his achievements in the bank in the last 5 years. Benny Adams takes us through some of these achievements.
With the support of African leaders, Adesina came into office with excellent professional and academic credentials as Nigeria's Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Coupled with vast experience in agripreneurship, he resolved that his mission at the African Development Bank is to help accelerate the development of Africa, create a new Africa, and provide new opportunities for every African, a task he hit the ground running to achieve. In 2020, he led the bank to achieve a historic capital increase, raising the capital of the bank from $93 billion to $208 billion, an increase of $155 billion, the highest in the history of the bank since its establishment in 1964. The bank also successfully raised funds from donor countries of over $7 billion for the African Development Fund for low-income countries, an increase of 35%. Under his leadership, The bank launched the Africa Investment Forum to mobilize massive flows of capital for Africa. Dr. Adesina led the bank to successfully launch at the G7 Summit the Affirmative Finance Action for Women, AFAWA, to mobilize $3 billion for women businesses and entrepreneurs in Africa, with strong support and resources from G7 leaders and nations. The bank has also substantially aligned its financing and operations to help accelerate Agenda 2063, the high-five agenda of the bank, which have over the past 4 years benefited an estimated 18 million people with access to electricity through Light Up and Power Africa projects. 141 million people gain access to improved agricultural technologies for food security. In addition, the bank successfully launched a $3 billion Fight COVID-19 Social Impact Bond on the international capital market. The social bond is the largest US dollar-dominated bond ever in world history. The bond is now listed on the London Stock Exchange, where it has been oversubscribed at $4.6 billion. Given these achievements, President Muhammadu Buhari, alongside all heads of state and government of the ECOWAS region, all 55 African countries, among other stakeholders, endorsed him for re-election for his second term as the sole candidate for president of the African Development Bank.
Our discussion segment today will focus a searchlight on the executive order granting financial autonomy to states and legislature and judiciary in Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari signed on Friday Executive Order 10 on the 22nd of May, granting financial autonomy to 36 houses of assembly and judiciary. According to the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, the Executive Order Number 10/2020 makes it mandatory that all states of the Federation should include the allocation of both legislature and the judiciary in the first-line charge of their budgets. Dr. Musa Bawa is an economist and entrepreneur and joins me to discuss this subject matter. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, all this talk of financial autonomy, how did we get to this point?
Well, let's start with a little bit of a genesis. Executive orders are not new. They're not unique to Nigeria. The first executive order was issued in 1793. That's over 200 years ago. At one time, President Roosevelt issued over 3,500 executive orders. So President Buhari has actually a very few, infinitesimal number of executive orders. Why did it become necessary? It became necessary because as recently as a year ago, a little over a year ago, the 8th Assembly approved the amendment of sections 121 of the Constitution, 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to give financial autonomy to the legislature and the state's houses of assembly. If that were implemented, Executive Order 10 wouldn't have been relevant today.
Looking at its immediate practical implications to those it affects, what does it mean?
What it means is, hitherto, the head of the legislature in a state, the speaker, for funding, he would have to go cap in hand to his governor to seek assistance to be able to fund the legislature. So also with the judiciary, they go begging. What this has done is to say, wait a minute, these funds no longer need to be routed through the governor. You are indeed independent. A federal state like Nigeria has the federal, state, and local government. So it is also for the legislature of the state and the judiciary. They must be independent. Executive Order 10 actually brings about that independence, which talks about a little more transparency, accountability. So ultimately, it's for the larger good.
Okay, talking about it being for the larger good, something comes to mind. Yes, this has been around for a while, but not implemented, though some states have implemented it. Now, for those states that have not, do you think they are prepared right now? Because it's been lying for a very long time. Do you think there's going to be a bit of a crisis or confusion in terms of implementation, or even knowing what to do with the funds at this point?
Well, thank you for that very brilliant question, Amina. Now, it is true that not all the governors are against it. Yes, it is true that those of our colleagues in the media would rather highlight the discontent and that the governors are probably heading to court, which isn't good for the country. But whether or not they're willing to implement those states that refuse, Section 6, subsection 1 of the Executive Order 10 empowers the Accountant General of the Federation to withhold allocations to those states. In other words, what President Buhari has done is not reenacting the law. He's just giving teeth to what has refused to be implemented over the years. So he's now saying, well, if you don't implement, there is some sanction to go with it. So we see this being implemented. There will be debates, there will be arguments back and forth, but at the end of the day, for the larger good, we will see the implementation of this order.
Now, so far, we've seen 2 budget cycles, 2019 and 2020. Now, this is coming into play. Do you see this achieving much after having 2 budget cycles?
Yes. Remember, it's not about the immediate impact. It's about changing the status quo. It's about changing the mindset that there is an emperor called governor, that these other arms will have to come and be subservient to. That itself, that reorientation, is a huge achievement. So yes, I see that being achieved.
Okay, what do you see across states in the Federation in terms of allocation, their budgets, and borrowing generally?
That's quite broad. Well, multiple angles. I see states re-engineering their thinking, especially post-COVID, because they don't have a choice. The resources are shrinking and shrinking. And now with things like Executive Order 10, they don't have that much to play around with, especially also with local governments becoming even stronger. So I see states going back to the drawing board, rethinking, looking for professionals. And I can tell you, if in Nasarawa State, I was there just yesterday, they will be inviting a lot of professionals to come and help redesign the thinking as to how to propel the state to increase its internally generated revenue, to develop a lot more in food, in security, and every other aspect of governance.
Talking about governance, this money is supposed to trickle down to the grassroots, say, for instance, the MSMEs, for instance. How do you see this playing out with this development?
Well, I hate to dabble into an area, but sincerity of purpose is key. It's okay to actually spell out all of this. How it pans out will depend on the sincerity of those in power. The smallholder farmers, MSMEs, and co. stand to benefit only if those in power truly allow them to enjoy particularly the palliatives, the support, the whatever government is willing to do to inject and kickstart the economy.
Perfect. Talking about the economy, 5 years into the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, with a bit of 3 years or so to go into. Now, in the long term, what do you see happening with this?
In the long term, a lot will happen. I think the foundation has been set. I think we've hit the reset button. I think we're awake now with Corona. People have suddenly woken up, not because of the virus itself, but because it has exposed a lot of the inadequacies. So suddenly, I see governors, as they are doing already, inviting the likes of G20 and co. to come and say, look, what do we do? And we're able to say to them, what do you have in your state? We think you have sesame. We think it's time you have agric villages. We think it's time to create new communities where there will be tolerance between herders and farmers, where emphasis will be on production of food, where there will be no longer hunger, as I said in the last program, hunger pandemic. So there will be sufficient food, enough for us to consume, enough for us to export and earn the much needed foreign exchange. There will be jobs. There will be an improvement in education, and obviously in the health sector, with what we've seen so far, there's bound to be an improvement. So going forward, the next 3 years, I expect to see a lot of transformation in virtually all sectors. I think the foundation has been set.
We look forward to building on that foundation. Dr. Musa Bawa, an economist, thank you so much for your insight on this topic. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
You are watching Business Express, reaching you from Abuja. The program returns shortly.
Let me assure Nigerians that all COVID-19 intervention funds are safe in the Treasury single account, and that government is still open to donations in this regard. Government has opened special accounts with 5 commercial banks which are directly linked to the Treasury single account. Donated funds are safe in the Central Bank of Nigeria. For verifiable information about the funds and other financial obligations of the federal government, please contact us directly at the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The account details for the donations are as follows.
And on the global scene, stock futures rise as optimism grows over reopening of the economy. In the United States, analysts say stocks could keep going higher, even with the massive unrest across America. Bossade Abel has a summary.
Investors remain on an optimistic mood, squarely focused on the prospect of economies reopening in early trading of 3rd June. Africa's stocks opened positive in early trading as Nairobi's All Share, Tunisia's Tunidex, Namibia's overall index and South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 posted gains, while Ghana's GSE Composite was positive marginally. European stocks traded in positive territory, but U.S. unrest is expected to weigh on investor sentiment. DAX advanced by 1.91%, FTSE 1.26%, and CAC 40 1.76%. Stocks in Asia largely rose, with optimism over the reopening of economies as authorities ease coronavirus-induced lockdown measures. Nikkei also saw decent gains as it advanced 1.29% to finish its trading day at 22,613.76. Hang Seng Index rose 1.37% as of its final hour of trading, with the Shanghai Composite fractionally higher at about 2,923.37. U.S. stock futures rose in early trading as markets continue to rally on optimism over economies emerging from coronavirus-led shutdowns. Dow futures implied an opening gain of 267 points. Futures on the S&P 500 added 0.82%, and Nasdaq Composite was higher by 0.59%.
How are other commodities currently faring? Let's take a look. Meanwhile, at the Nigerian equities midweek trading show an appreciation of 0.10% with the all-share index closing today's session at 25,407.96 basis points. A volume of trade was 353 million, valued at 7.035 billion naira in 4,659 deals. Market capitalization stood at 13.2 trillion naira. The top trades for today was FBN Holdings, Nigerian Breweries and Guarantee Trust Bank, while the gainers chart was led by Presco, MTN Nigeria and Stanbic Bank. The losers chart, Guinness, UNCA and PZ. Now, the Naira weakens against the dollar by 1.14% as market uncertainty persists. Let's see how the Naira is faring on the currency market. And that's it on this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations and suggestions coming. Be informed, all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. And you can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is @NTA News. Now, don't forget the hashtag BizEx. Remember to always wash your hands on the running water or use a sanitizer as the world battles COVID-19. Business Express returns on Friday. I am Amina Nujaim. Thank you for watching.